The evening wind drifted softly across the open land, carrying the scent of hay, wood smoke, and the dying warmth of sunset. The Wardell Ranch stretched endlessly, its fences cutting across the earth like scars. It wasn't a home. It was a fortress, cold, proud, and silent. The stables were quiet now. Horses shifted lazily in their stalls, the workers long gone to their bunks. Only two figures remained outside, a girl who didn't belong here, and the man who refused to let her go. Her name was Elise. She sat on the wooden steps beside the main house, her fingers tangled in her lap, eyes fixed on the dusty floorboards. She wasn't crying, not because she didn't want to, but because she had already learned that tears were useless currency in a cruel world. Her thin shawl fluttered weakly in the wind as if even the fabric wanted to leave. Behind her, in the golden wash of the porch light, stood Adrian Wardell, the man who owned the land, the house, the horses, and now, somehow, her fate. His expression was carved from stone. His jaw clenched, his eyes dark and unreadable, except for the anger that flickered there like a quiet fire. To him, Elise was not a guest. She was a debt, punishment, a living reminder of something he couldn't forgive. Neither of them spoke, but the silence between them said everything. An invisible war fought without words. The night thickened. The stars emerged one by one, distant and cold. The last light of the sun faded from the horizon, and Elise finally lifted her head, her voice breaking the stillness.
How long do you plan to keep me here?
Adrian didn't answer. He turned his back instead, a single motion that felt like a door closing forever. The wind sighed across the ranch as if whispering secrets neither of them wanted to hear. And that was how it began, her captivity, his anger, and the thin, trembling line between hate and something far more dangerous. The ranch was a world of its own. Endless fences, dust, and quiet that could drive a person mad. Every morning, Elise woke before sunrise, the cold air biting through her shawl as she fetched water from the well. The wind seemed to speak out here, whispering things she couldn't quite name. Sometimes it sounded like the past calling her back. Sometimes it sounded like him. From the porch, Adrian Wardell watched her. He didn't speak, didn't offer help, didn't even look like he cared, but he was always there, always watching. His silence was heavier than any chain. At breakfast, the workers spoke in low voices. Their glances told her everything they didn't dare say out loud. She doesn't belong here. She's the reason he's like this. And maybe they were right. Maybe she didn't belong anywhere anymore. That afternoon, she tried to tend to one of the horses, a nervous gray mare that refused to eat. She whispered softly to it, her hands trembling but gentle. The mare calmed, pressing its head against her arm. Elise smiled faintly for the first time in days. Then a shadow fell across the stall. "Don't touch her." His voice was low, steady, but it carried that restrained anger she'd grown to fear. She froze, her hand still on the horse's neck.
She hasn't eaten since morning. I thought.
"You thought wrong." He stepped closer, the air between them tightening. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the soft snort of the mare and the thud of Elise's heart. His eyes locked on hers. Hard, unreadable, but underneath, something flickered. Pain or regret. She couldn't tell.
Why keep me here if you hate me so much?
Because leaving would be too easy for you. She swallowed hard, fighting the sting in her chest. He turned to walk away, but paused when he heard the horse nicker softly, nuzzling Elise again. He looked back, and for the first time his eyes softened just a little, barely enough to notice. Then, as if realizing it, he hardened again. "Finish up. Then stay out of the stables unless I tell you otherwise." He walked off, boots crunching on the gravel, his shoulders stiff with the weight of a man who didn't know whether he was punishing her or himself. That night, Elise sat by the window of the small room she'd been given. More like a cell than a bedroom. Outside, the wind moved through the grass, brushing against the wooden walls like a whisper. And somewhere in the distance, she heard him, Adrian's voice carried faintly as he spoke to one of the workers. She didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the words reached her all the same.
You really trust her around the animals, sir.
She won't hurt them.
But you said.
I said she stays. That's all you need to know. The worker didn't reply. The night swallowed their voices, but Elise sat frozen, staring into the dark, a tear slipping down her cheek before she could stop it. He had defended her. He didn't know she'd heard, and somehow that hurt more than all the anger in the world. The next morning, she found a small loaf of bread on the porch, still warm, wrapped in cloth. No note, no explanation, but she didn't need one. She knew who left it, and when she lifted her eyes toward the distant figure tending to the horses, the wind caught her hair, just enough to make him glance her way. He looked once, then looked away, but the silence between them wasn't the same anymore. The days stretched long and dry across the Wardell ranch. Morning after morning, Elise woke to the same sky, wide, endless, and merciless. She worked silently, mending fences, cleaning stables, doing anything to avoid his gaze. But his presence was everywhere, in the echo of boots on wooden floors, in the smell of tobacco and leather, in the way the air grew heavier whenever he entered a room. Adrian Wardell was a man people feared, but Elise feared the silence between them more. It was the kind of silence that carried ghosts. That evening, dark clouds gathered over the plains, slow and heavy, like a storm waiting for permission to break. She found Adrian by the barn, inspecting a broken gate. His sleeves were rolled up, forearms dusted with dirt and sweat, his jaw tense.
I can fix that.
You've done enough damage for one lifetime. The words hit harder than she expected. Her hands tightened on the wooden rail.
You still think I did it, don't you?
Think? No, I know. The sky rumbled. The first drops of rain began to fall.
Then tell me, Adrian. Tell me what crime I'm paying for.
My brother trusted you. He believed you. You lied, and he died because of it. The thunder cracked, sharp and sudden, but not as loud as the silence that followed. She stared at him, rain starting to streak her face.
You think I wanted that? That I'd ever hurt him?
I think you ran. You ran and left him to face what you caused.
You don't know what happened that night.
Then tell me. Her lips parted, but the words wouldn't come. There were truths she couldn't yet speak, wounds she'd buried too deep. The rain poured harder. They rushed into the barn for shelter, water dripping from their clothes. The storm howled outside, shaking the wooden beams. Lightning flashed, painting their faces in white and shadow.
You've already judged me. What good would the truth do?
I lost my brother because of you. You don't get to play the victim.
And you don't get to rewrite the past because you're drowning in guilt.
Her voice cut through the storm, raw, trembling. He froze. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she turned away, clutching the edge of a stall for balance. The gray mare, the same one she'd comforted before, nickered softly, brushing its muzzle against her shoulder. Adrian watched her in silence. In that fleeting moment, something changed. For the first time, he saw not the enemy, but the woman, drenched, trembling, defiant, yet still gentle enough to calm a terrified horse in a thunderstorm. Why didn't you run? If you hate it here so much?
Because I'm not running anymore. Not from you. Not from what happened.
Their eyes locked, thunder growling in the distance. For a heartbeat, time stopped. His anger, her pain. They stood inches apart, both too stubborn to move and too drawn to look away. Then lightning struck again, close enough to shake the barn. Adrian stepped back, breaking the spell. Stay inside until it's over.
You can't keep saving me just to hate me again.
He said nothing, but when she finally turned to sit on the haystack, her breath uneven, she didn't see the way he looked at her. Not with hate this time, but something far more dangerous. Something like longing he couldn't afford to feel. Outside, the storm began to fade. Inside, a different kind of storm had already begun. One that neither the wind nor the rain could quiet. The storm had passed, but the air between them hadn't cleared. For days, the ranch seemed quieter. The kind of quiet that made every breath sound too loud, every heartbeat too close. Elise worked harder than ever. She mended fences, carried feed, even fixed the roof shingles when one of the workers twisted his ankle. She didn't do it to prove anything. She did it to forget. But forgetting was impossible when Adrian was everywhere. She could feel him in the way the air shifted when he entered a room. She could sense his eyes on her back, even when he pretended not to care. And every time they crossed paths, something inside her burned, fierce, unwanted, unstoppable. That afternoon, she found one of the horses limping. A stallion named Valor, Adrian's favorite. She knelt beside it, her hand brushing along its leg, checking for swelling. The horse flinched.
Easy, boy. I won't hurt you.
What's wrong with him? She startled, hadn't heard him approach. He stood behind her, arms folded. His shirt sleeves rolled to the elbows, shadows from the barn door stretching across his face.
His tendons strained. He needs rest, not work.
He doesn't rest well, gets restless.
Then you'll have to make him trust you.
A faint smirk tugged at his lips, the first real expression she'd seen in weeks. You talk to him like he understands.
Maybe he does. He just needs someone who listens.
He stepped closer, too close. The air grew heavy again, charged, unsteady. Her fingers stilled on the horse's coat, but her pulse didn't. You're good with them.
Animals don't judge. They just feel.
Their eyes met, and something passed between them. A quiet, aching awareness neither could hide anymore. But then, as if realizing it, Adrian stepped back. The moment snapped like glass. Don't mistake kindness for forgiveness.
And don't mistake forgiveness for weakness.
The silence after that was thick enough to drown in. He stared at her. This woman who had every reason to hate him, and yet still stood tall, still spoke like someone who refused to break. That evening, the sun dipped low, painting the sky in gold and fire. Elise walked past the training corral and froze. Adrian was there, working the stallion, patient, controlled, speaking in calm, low tones. He was trying, because of what she said. For a moment, she watched him. The man who had caged her, now unknowingly learning gentleness. And she felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something dangerous, curiosity, and maybe hope. Later that night, a sound woke her. The sharp cry of an animal. She ran outside barefoot, the cold dirt biting at her feet. In the barn, she found the mare panicking from a loose beam that had fallen during the storm. She rushed in to calm it, but the beam was heavy, too heavy. Adrian appeared out of nowhere, catching it before it hit her. His hand brushed her arm, holding her steady. You could have been crushed.
I didn't think.
Yeah, that's your problem. But he didn't let go. For a long moment they just stood there, the sound of their breathing louder than the wind outside. His hand still on her arm, her eyes locked on his. Neither moved. The air was electric, that fragile second where anger and desire look the same.
You can let go now.
Can I? His voice was lower now, softer, but dangerous in its honesty. Then he stepped back abruptly, his face shadowed again. Get some sleep.
You should try it sometime.
She walked past him, her shoulder brushing his light as air, but enough to make him close his eyes for half a second longer than he should have. That night, neither of them slept. Outside, the wind moved across the plains again. Slow, restless, alive. And inside the house, two hearts beat in the same rhythm, though neither dared to admit it. The wind had changed, carried the scent of smoke. By late afternoon, the horizon glowed faintly orange. Distant at first, then spreading, climbing higher until the sky itself seemed to burn. The wildfire was moving fast, devouring dry grass and old fences, and in its path stood the Wardell Ranch. Elise had never seen Adrian like that. Command in his voice, fire in his eyes, barking orders as the men ran with buckets, ropes, and shovels. He wasn't angry now. He was alive. "Move the horses to the west paddock. Keep them low and away from the wind," Adrian yelled.
It's spreading fast, boss.
"Then we move faster." He turned and froze. Elise was running straight toward the stables. "Elise, stop."
There's still one in there. The foal. He's terrified.
He grabbed her arm as she passed, but she pulled free and sprinted inside before he could stop her. The heat was already unbearable, the air thick with smoke. The foal kicked and cried from its stall, eyes wild. Elise wrapped her shawl around its head, whispering softly, coaxing it forward.
It's okay, baby. We're getting out.
A beam cracked overhead. Fire leapt down the wall. Adrian burst in, coughing, eyes scanning until they landed on her. "Elise!"
I've got him. Just go.
He ignored her, crossing the flames, throwing his jacket over them both. The fire hissed, swallowing the sound of his voice as he lifted the foal's lead rope and pulled Elise against him. "Stay behind me." They stumbled out through the smoke, coughing, half-blind, until the night air hit them like ice. The men rushed forward, dousing what remained of the flames, shouting, moving. But for a moment, Elise heard none of it. She just felt his arm around her, solid, shaking, real. Later, after the fire was contained, the world felt eerily still. Ash drifted through the air like black snow. The barn was scorched but standing. Everyone was safe. Everyone except them. They sat by the water trough, both covered in soot. Elise's hands trembled as she tried to wash the ash from her face. Adrian knelt beside her silently, took the rag from her hands, and began to wipe her cheek himself, slowly, carefully, like he was afraid she might disappear.
You shouldn't have come in after me.
"You shouldn't have gone in at all.
I couldn't just leave him.
And I couldn't just leave you." The words slipped out before he could stop them. They both froze. The firelight flickered against his face, painting gold and shadow across his jaw.
Say that again.
"Don't push it."
I'm not. I just need to know if you meant it.
He looked at her then, really looked at her. The woman he'd hated, punished, blamed. Sitting there with ash in her hair and courage in her eyes. And he broke. He leaned forward. She didn't move. The world shrank to a breath, a heartbeat, the taste of smoke still in the air. Their lips almost met, almost, until the sound of voices snapped the moment apart. Adrian stood abruptly, the mask sliding back over his face. "Get some rest. You did good today."
And tomorrow? Will I go back to being your prisoner again?
He didn't answer, but as he walked away, his hand brushed hers light, fleeting, like a secret neither of them was ready to admit. That night, the fire still burned. Not on the hills, but somewhere deeper, inside them both, and it wasn't one that could be put out easily. The sky was ink black again. Only the faint orange of dying embers glowed where the wildfire had raged. Inside the ranch house, silence stretched, thick, uneasy, full of things unsaid. Elise sat at the kitchen table, a cup of untouched tea cooling in her hands. Her muscles ached. Smoke still clung to her hair. Every time she blinked, she saw the fire again. Adrian's arm around her, the weight of his breath in the smoke. The screen door creaked. He stepped in quietly, shirt half unbuttoned, cuts across his forearms. For once, he didn't look like the man who owned everything. He looked tired, human. "You should sleep."
I tried.
"You're shaking."
So are you.
They both gave a short, broken laugh. It sounded strange in the quiet house. He poured water, handed her a glass, then hesitated. Unsure whether to stay or walk away, she moved a chair aside in invitation. He sat. For a long moment neither spoke. The wind pressed against the windows. The ticking clock filled the space between their heartbeats.
You could have died tonight.
Would have been a stupid way to go.
And still, you ran in.
You always run toward danger, don't you?
Someone had to.
He looked at her then, really looked, and all the walls he'd built seemed to slip. He reached across the table, fingers brushing her wrist. It wasn't planned. It was instinct. She didn't pull away. I spent months hating you. It was easier than asking what really happened.
Then ask.
I'm not sure I'm ready for the answer.
Maybe you're just afraid it won't change anything.
Maybe I'm afraid it will. His hand slid fully over hers now. Steady, warm, trembling. The distance between them vanished without either standing up. When they finally met halfway across the table, it wasn't a collision. It was a surrender. The kiss was slow, hesitant, as if they both expected the world to break again. When it ended, he rested his forehead against hers, eyes closed, breathing her name like a confession. Elise.
Don't say you're sorry. Not tonight.
The lights flickered once as wind swept through the eaves. Outside, the night hummed with the quiet after a storm. Inside, the two of them sat in that fragile peace, knowing the world would look different when morning came, because hatred had burned itself out, and something entirely new had taken its place. Morning crept across the ranch like a secret trying not to be heard. Golden light spilled through the cracks in the shutters, landing softly on the wooden floorboards, on the half-finished cup of tea, on the faint outline of two chairs pulled close together. Elise woke to the sound of boots outside. The space beside her was empty. She touched her lips, the memory still there, and felt that rush of warmth that turned to cold almost instantly. What happened last night was real, too real, and he was gone before dawn. Outside, Adrian stood by the corral, hands gripping the fence, eyes fixed on the open land. The horses grazed quietly, unaware that everything inside him was in chaos. He didn't hear her approach at first, didn't hear the soft sound of her bare feet on the dirt until her voice broke the silence.
You left.
You should be resting.
You didn't answer me.
He finally turned. His eyes were shadowed, guarded again. The softness of last night buried under layers of guilt. What happened? Shouldn't have.
Because of me?
Because of who I am, what I've done. She stepped closer, heart thudding.
You didn't do anything wrong.
I've spent years hating you. It's not something you can wash off overnight.
Then don't wash it off. Face it.
Her voice trembled, but she didn't back down. He stared at her, jaw tight, eyes soft. He wanted to reach for her. He wanted to walk away. He did neither. You don't understand, Elise. I don't get to want things anymore.
Then what was last night?
A mistake. The word cut like a blade. She froze, her breath catching, her heart stumbling in her chest.
Right. A mistake.
Elise.
Don't. I get it.
She turned and walked away before he could say another word. The wind caught her hair, tossing it wildly behind her like it refused to be tamed. Like her. He watched her go. Every step she took pulling at something inside him he didn't have the courage to name. That night, she packed her small bag. A worn dress. A locket. Nothing else. She looked once around the room that had been her prison, her shelter, and somehow her undoing. She whispered to the empty air.
You win, Adrian Wardell. You always do.
But before she could slip out, the sound of hurried footsteps stopped her. Where are you going?
Anywhere but here.
You don't even know what's out there.
I know what's in here, and I can't breathe in it anymore.
He stepped forward, but she shook her head. Her eyes shimmered. Not weak, not broken, just tired of fighting a war she never started.
You said it was a mistake. So let me leave before you make another one.
She brushed past him out into the night. He didn't stop her this time. Hours later, as the moon climbed high, Adrian found himself standing alone on the porch, staring into the dark. The wind was cold, the silence colder. Somewhere out there, Elise was walking down an empty road, and for the first time in years he was afraid. Afraid of losing the one person who had ever made him feel alive again. The morning sun rose behind a curtain of dust. Adrian hadn't slept. The ranch felt empty, every echo of her footsteps now a ghost. He tried to work. He tried to think. But every sound, every whisper of wind, carried her name. By midday, he couldn't stand the silence anymore. He saddled his horse and rode to town, to the sheriff's office, to the one place where her story had first turned dark. Inside, the air smelled of ink and dust. Old files lined the walls, yellowed by years of heat and memory. The sheriff, gray-bearded and tired, looked up when Adrian entered. "Wardell, it's been a while," the sheriff said. "I need to see the report," Adrian replied, his voice steady but edged with something sharp. "From 2 years ago, my brother's accident. I already told you," the sheriff began, but Adrian cut him off. "I said I need to see it." Something in Adrian's tone made the old man stop. After a pause, he nodded, rummaged through a drawer, and pulled out a file. Adrian opened it with trembling hands. His pulse quickened as his eyes scanned the words. There, in black and white, was something he had never noticed before. A signature. Charles Hensley, a man who had once worked with the Wardells. A man Adrian had trusted. A man who had disappeared right after the accident. And beneath that page, another, a statement Elise had written the night of the tragedy. She had tried to tell the truth. No one had listened, least of all him. He rode back hard, the wind slashing against his face. Guilt and fury churned inside him. Not at her, but at himself. When he reached the ranch, he saw Hensley waiting near the corral, speaking quietly with one of the workers. Adrian dismounted, his jaw set like steel. "You've got a lot of nerve showing your face here," he said. Hensley smirked. "Easy, Wardell. Let's not do anything stupid. You framed her. You lied about my brother." "Why?" Adrian demanded. "Because your brother found out I was stealing from the contracts," Hensley sneered. "She was just convenient." The punch came fast. A blur of motion, years of rage breaking loose. Hensley stumbled back, blood dripping from his lip. "You destroyed her life," Adrian growled. Hensley wiped his mouth and looked up at him coldly. "You destroyed it for me." Adrian froze because it was true. Hensley turned to leave, but Adrian grabbed him by the collar and yanked him back. "You're going to the sheriff," he said, voice low and dangerous. "You're going to clear her name." "And if I don't?" Hensley challenged. "Then I'll show you what a Wardell does when he's got nothing left to lose." By nightfall, the truth was written down and signed. Elise was innocent. Adrian should have felt relief. Instead, he felt something worse, shame. He rode out into the night, the moon pale above the hills, searching the empty roads. He found her miles away, walking alone, her shawl pulled tight against the wind. He slowed his horse beside her. She didn't look up. "If you're here to bring me back," she said quietly, "save your breath." "I'm not here to bring you back," Adrian answered. "Then why?" she asked, her tone trembling between anger and exhaustion. "To tell you I was wrong," he said, his voice low and raw. She stopped walking. The wind carried the words between them like a confession to the sky. "You told the truth," he went on. "I didn't listen. I let someone else's lie ruin your life and mine." "Why tell me now?" she asked softly. Because I couldn't stand another sunrise without you knowing I believe you. Silence hung between them. Then she looked up, eyes glistening, her mouth trembling between anger and forgiveness. And what am I supposed to do with that, Adrian? She asked. Whatever you need to, he said quietly. Hate me, leave me, but just don't disappear again. He dismounted slowly and walked toward her, the wind tugging at his coat. When he stopped in front of her, his voice cracked, just once. You were never my prisoner, he said. I was yours. And for the first time she saw it. The man beneath the pride, stripped of armor, asking for something he had never asked for in his life. Forgiveness. They stood there, surrounded by wind and moonlight, two broken souls finally seeing each other clearly. Not captor and captive, not victim and villain, just two people who had survived the same fire and finally stepped out of it. Days passed. The ranch looked the same, but something had changed in its heartbeat. Elise was back. Not as a prisoner, not as a debt, but as herself. The workers looked at her differently now, not with pity or suspicion, but with quiet respect. She helped in the stables again, brushed the horses, fixed breakfast when the cook overslept. She laughed sometimes, and every time she did, Adrian froze, caught between guilt and wonder. That morning, he found her by the fence, sleeves rolled up, sunlight on her face. She looked peaceful. He hadn't seen her like that before. You're up early, he said. Old habits, she replied with a small smile. You don't have to work, he told her. I know, she answered softly, but doing something with my hands reminds me I still exist. He smiled faintly. For the first time in a long time, it reached his eyes. You shouldn't have had to prove that to anyone, he said. Maybe, she admitted, but proving it to myself feels good. He nodded, then spoke quietly. I sent the confession to the sheriff. Hensley's gone for good. She looked at him, her eyes soft but unreadable. Then it's over, she said. Not for me, he answered. He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and handed her something small. Her locket polished and repaired. Found it in the fire ruins weeks ago, he said quietly. Didn't think I'd ever get to give it back. Her voice was barely a whisper. You kept it. Couldn't throw it away, he admitted. Felt like throwing you away. The silence between them was warm now, not heavy. When she smiled, it wasn't forgiveness spoken aloud, but he felt it all the same. That night, they sat on the porch together, watching the stars return one by one. No words, just the soft sounds of crickets and wind. After a long while, Elise spoke quietly. Do you ever think about starting over? Every day, he said. Then why don't you? She asked. Because I don't know if I deserve to, he replied. She looked out at the night sky, her voice gentle but steady. Maybe it's not about deserving. Maybe it's about choosing. He turned toward her then, really looked at her, the way a man looks at the first sunrise after years of darkness. And finally he let himself smile. Then I choose you, Elise, he said. Her breath caught, but this time she didn't look away. Then we'll see where choice takes us, she whispered. The next days unfolded like quiet healing, laughter echoing through the barn, dinner shared without words of tension, two broken people learning to live with the light again. But beneath that peace, something stirred, a feeling that the story wasn't finished. Not yet, because love wasn't just about staying. It was about what you were willing to fight for when the world tested you again. The summer wind was warm again. It carried the scent of wildflowers across the valley, sweeping through the open fields of the Wardell Ranch. For the first time in years, the land felt alive, free. Elise stood by the corral, the sun glinting off her hair as she watched a young colt take its first shaky steps. Behind her, footsteps approached, slow, sure, familiar. She didn't have to turn to know it was him. He's stubborn, Adrian said. Takes after his owner, Elise replied. He smiled. You saying that like it's a bad thing? Didn't say that, she said with a teasing glance. They both laughed softly, the kind of laugh that comes from a place no one can touch anymore. Peace. Later that day, a storm rolled across the far hills. The sky turned silver and wild, the wind rising through the grass. As the first drops began to fall, Elise ran for the porch. Adrian followed, pulling her close just as thunder cracked above them. They stood together in the rain, two souls who had already weathered every storm. You ever think about what would have happened if we'd never met? Elise asked over the sound of rain. All the time, he said. And? She pressed softly. Then I stop, he admitted, because it's the one thought I don't ever want to finish. She smiled up at him, rain in her lashes, light in her eyes. You're not the man I met that night, she said. And you're not the woman I thought you were, he replied. Guess we both learned how wrong we were. No, Adrian said gently, shaking his head. How lucky. When the storm passed, the sky broke open with gold light. The fields shimmered, the ranch alive again under the glow of sunset. Elise stepped out from under the porch, lifting her face to the fading light. Adrian followed, sliding his arm around her waist. She leaned back into him. No words, no fear, no walls. Just them. So this is it? She asked softly. No, he whispered, his voice low and sure. This is home. He kissed her forehead, the kind of kiss that feels like a promise. The wind caught her hair again, just like that first night. Only this time, she wasn't alone, and she wasn't afraid. As the last light of day melted into twilight, the ranch fell quiet, the fences glowing, the horses grazing, the sky endless above them. Two broken hearts had found their way through fire, guilt, and forgiveness. And somehow, love had been waiting at the other side. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And that was enough.